Today marks World Bipolar Day, marked every March 30th, which is Vincent van Gogh's birthday. The famous painter was diagnosed with bipolar disorder after he died. And many more people today are still being misdiagnosed or not at all in what can be a very debilitating condition. It's one that Yolanda Jung has lived with for much of her adult life, and she joins us live now in the studio on CP24 Breakfast. Yolanda, it's great for you to come in to raise awareness and talk about World Bipolar Day, but I want to start by asking you about your own experience, because you were diagnosed 23 years ago. What was that like? What is your experience with this disorder?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here to raise awareness. It was a really scary experience. I was in first year engineering, and I was away from home, and I just started with really feeling very tired and having very negative thoughts. I started thinking that, life wasn't worth living, that I'm going to be a failure in life, and I wasn't able to wake up for classes anymore. And it was all new to me because I was always been a very cheerful, upbeat kind of person. And so it was a very scary, confusing kind of experience.
And I understand that bipolar disorder often gets misdiagnosed because of something also called the hypomanic state, where, people look at you and say, oh, you're acting like you have a lot of energy, you're doing type A things that people would do, but then you fall into that depressive state where you could be out cold in bed for 3 to 7 days. So in terms of your own diagnosis, when did they discover, okay, this is bipolar disease, and how do they treat it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have always been the type A kid who always does everything. So I think maybe they missed the signs earlier in my late teens, because that's usually when people first get diagnosed. And so often for people who are very high energy, there could be some hypomanic elements to it. But more often is when people start taking antidepressants, and it triggers a more severe episode called a manic episode. And for me, that's actually how I was diagnosed with bipolar instead of unipolar depression.
Wow. Yeah. Your official diagnosis is bipolar 1 disorder with rapid cycling. I first learned about bipolar disorder, I think when I first really understood it was through that movie with Anne Hathaway called Modern Love, where she plays a woman with the disorder trying to date. And it really shows the debilitating states she goes through. I understand that you do a lot of speaking as well and raising awareness. What do you think is the biggest misconception about bipolar disorder, and what do you think it's important for people to know on a day like today?
Yeah, I love that question. And I have to say, the Modern Love episode with Anne Hathaway was so well done. It was exactly like when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's my experience on screen. So it was really great, and so great that you saw it too. I think that often people might have a misconception that people with bipolar disorder are unstable, or that they might not be able to get their life together, because it's true, it is very difficult. I've gone through a lot of challenges in getting sort of my life together, and so it is not impossible. And the other misconception, I think, with bipolar disorder, I get this a lot, is people might come up to me after speaking engagement or workshop. They'll say, Yolanda, my cousin has bipolar. And I'll say, that's, I'm sorry to hear that, what challenges they have. But often people come to share that with me because they feel like everyone who lives with bipolar disorder must be the same. But it is a condition in your brain. There's a chemical imbalance. There's some similarities, but the personalities are still different. And so that's one thing I think it's a huge misconception, is that just because you have the same mental health condition that you must be the same person or have similar personalities. That's actually not the case. There's still agency within the person to actually help themselves to improve their lives and improve their conditions.
Okay, wow. Yolanda, I've learned so much this morning, and I really thank you for joining us to share your experience and to raise more awareness on this World Bipolar Day. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Take care.
Much appreciated.